Hello，大家好，我是老唐。今天是加拿大萨省时间2023年6月12号，每天阅读10分钟，好习惯养成。上一次录视频已经是6月7号的事情了，过去4、5天了。最近精神状态不是特别好，然后经常失眠，然后有轻度的抑郁，也断更了好几天了。今天接着阅读《Grow Rich with Peace of Mind》这本书，因为我们原计划是在6月份完成这本英文书的阅读的。啊，开始今天的阅读。第2章，Close the doors on your past. Whenever you meet a misfortune, put it into your past. Keep your mind upon future achievement, and you will find that mistakes of the past often work to fill the future with good fortune. Your wealth and your peace of mind are strongly connected with each other. Even at the lowest level jobs, your success waits within your own mind. Add value to your work, and you set in motion the forces that make the concepts of your mind turn into realities of living. When I was still a poor youth in West County, Virginia, I invested 25 cents in a raffle ticket. The prize was a horse, and I won. The horse was was of considerable value of a farming family in those days, and this one, our breed, was a good horse. Filled with pride, I led him home. How fortunate I was, or was I? Having installed my horse carefully in the stable, I treated him to oats, corn, and hay, all he could eat. The same night, he broke out of the stable, went down to the river, and drank his fill of water. As anyone who knows horses could have predicted, the poor, bloated animal foundered and died. It cost me $5 to have him hauled away and buried. So much for my good luck. Yet who can tell the uses of the past? I was able in later years to look back upon the accident and see I had been fortunate. You see, I never again have been tempted to risk money in any kind of gambling. Surely I have saved the cost of many horses, let alone saved my peace of mind. 塞翁失马，焉知非福。Now let me tell you of a more serious incident which caused a man's life, threatened my own life, prevented me from taking advantage of a great opportunity, seemed like an unmitigated disaster, and yet turned out to be for my boundless good and the good of others as well. At the time, I had completed the first draft of the Science of Personal Achievement. In 8 volumes, I needed a publisher, Mr. Ron R. Mallett, publisher of the Canton, Ohio Daily News, became my partner and business manager. We induced George Albert H. Gary, chairman of the board of the United States Steel Corporation, to supply the money necessary to print the first edition. Furthermore, Judge Gary agreed to purchase a complete set of the books for every key man employed in that vast corporation. The contract had not yet been signed, but I was on top of the world. Now, Mr. Mallett had been using his newspaper as a means to expose a very unholy alliance between the bootleggers and the police force of his city. 3 days before we were to meet Judge Gary, a member of the police force, and the gangster shot and killed Don Mallett. Because I'd been associated with him, the gang believed I, too, had had something to do with their exposure. I missed the assassination by only a few hours. For a year, I had to have, at length, the murderers were caught, convicted, and given lifetime sentences in prison. Meanwhile, Judge Gary had died. All my plans were upset. I had had to waste much precious time while in hiding, and I had no publisher. I was dragged back where I had started, or rather, I was behind where I had been. I made a new start and found a publisher for my writings. That is a story in itself, but it is not the point of this story. I found out later that if Judge Gary had become my financial backer, and if the science of personal achievement had been distributed within the United States Steel Corporation as had been planned, I would forever after have been looked upon as a tool of big business. The science of personal achievement would have been greeted with suspicion, would have been turned on cold by many of those whom it now serves. Furthermore, I might have been inhibited against making statements I have made from time to time against big business when it forgets its real purpose, which is to be build a better world for mankind. Every adversity has within it the seed of an equivalent or a great benefit. Every adversity has within it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. Can you remember that? Write it on a card. Carry the card in your pocket and read it daily. In that phrase lies the key to many a mass peace of man. It is not the supreme secret to which I have referred, but it lives on the same street. Set it firmly into your consciousness. Every adversity has within it the seed of an equivalent or a greater benefit. Thus it's possible and strongly advisable to close the doors to your past, insofar as any regrets or bitterness or mortems are concerned. You're searching for wealth and peace of mind. Neither the way to wealth nor the way to peace of mind leads through the graveyard of unpleasant experiences long past. When you have attained peace of mind, your mind will automatically reject every thought and every mental reaction which is not beneficial to your welfare. Meanwhile, help yourself attain this great command of man and all it can do for you. Avoid all negative mental influences and especially avoid that shadow of mournful regret which can keep all the sunshine out of your life and keep out other gold as well. Time is the great magician. Close the door on ugly experiences, disappointments, and frustrations. Then the great magician, time, can transmute past sorrows and mistakes into present rewards, success, and happiness. Knut Hamsun, a Norwegian immigrant, failed at everything he tried in his country. In desperation, he decided to write the story of his struggles. His book, which he called Hunger, won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Hamsun's terrible experiences at length had made him a rich and famous man. Harry Truman failed as a haberdasher. If from then on he had considered himself a failure, he certainly could not have entered up upon the road to the presidency. Harry Truman. We've also the example of another man who took up storekeeping, but the store failed. He took up engineering and also failed. The sheriff sold his serving instruments to pay his debts. He joined a group of soldiers in the Indian War and had the rank of captain. His record as a soldier was so poor that he was reduced to the rank of private and sent home. He was passionately in love and engaged to be married. The girl died and left him in a terrible state of shock. He took up law. He won a few cases. He went into politics, ran for office, and was defeated. Is it astonishing that Abraham Lincoln eventually became president? In a way, it is, and in a way, it is not. He might have allowed his men to drag failure and discouragement after him, as a prisoner drags his chains. After all, so many people do, and they are indeed prisoners of the past, never able to break free of the image of failure which, to them, means me. He did not do this, however. The way in which he determinedly left a failure behind him was no miracle. It is a grand privilege available to every human being. The man who became president had been tempered in the affairs of life, or he could not have been what he was, not have done what he did. You cannot see all of the great plan of your life. You can make it full and rewarding. However, if you treat each sorrow and setback as a tempering toward greater and richer experiences to come, let me suggest keep yourself aware of life's endless combinations of circumstances. Keep yourself aware of life's endless combinations of circumstances. Have you been disappointed in love? Your heart feels literally broken. You can see no joy in the world. You may wish to take an overdose of sleeping pills and end it all. Yet it is likely that nowhere in the world exists a woman or man who can take the place of the one you lost. A moment of thought within the citadel, citadel of your deepest mind will show you this is hardly possible. So it happened with me. For after a dreadful disappointment of the heart, I met a combination of circumstances which led at last to the perfect wife. There is a more poignant point to the story. When after a violent lover's quarrel, my first sweetheart turned away from me, married another man. I thought the world had ended, and 5 years later, the man she married committed suicide, unbalanced by the constant friction of living with the woman I had been so anxious to marry. Where would I have been with the terror of a woman who hacked me instead of helping me? Every adversity has within it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. Remember that even a condition which the world calls handicapped, you can call benefit and make it truly so. I mentioned that Thomas Edison had been formal schooling. W. Clyde Stone, the highly successful insurance man, was a high school dropout. So many men have succeeded despite the lack of book learning that, without the least downgrading education, we may say the lack of it need not to be a handicap. It depends on the man. But what of Edison's deafness? Surely a very marginal ability to hear is a handicap, but again, it depends on the man. Edison, as a boy, had been a candy butcher on trains. Once a man lifted him and his entire load of candy onto a train by his ears, and that was the beginning of the end of his hearing. He could have dwelt all his life on his cruel and damaging experience, like many another. He could have put his major energies into bewailing his fate, but he didn't. When I visited him, he was dependent upon a hearing aid, a primitive thing by today's standards. When I was sure we understood each other's meant, I asked him if he had not found his deafness a great handicap. He replied, To the contrary, to the contrary, deafness has been a great help to me. It has saved me from having to listen a lot of worthless chatter, and it has taught me to hear from within. Anyone who wants peace of mind should remember those last three words, hear from within. When transmuting his applica- uh, affliction into a benefit, Mr. Edison learned tune, how to tune in on all the subtle power which waits within every man. He felt too that he heard from within the voice of an infinite intelligence and received guidance from an infallible source. Every adversity has within it the seed of an equivalent or great benefit, greater benefit. When you speak of failure, you attract failure. When you speak of success, you attract success. I once made a survey of more than 30,000 men and women to ascertain their staying qualities in the face of failure and defeat. For the majority of those people, it took only one setback to wed them to defeat. Of those who kept on aspiring, another large percentage got started in various projects, but quit even before meeting with defeat. The defeat came not from circumstances, but from the built-in attitude of defeat which they carried from the past. Instead of closing the door on the past, they run back through the door and every opportunity. Needless to say, there were no Fords or Edisons in this group. On the other hand, I'm reminded of a man named Arthur that Daciel, who built his career out of a family failure that had cost all of his father's savings. It was a business in mobile homes which never got going. Now the father handed into the son. Obviously, what could Daciel, then in his 20s, do with the business? Most men would have liquidated it on the spot. Starting in his garage next to the railroad tracks in Elkhart, Indiana, Mr. Daciel first designed a small, easily transportable mobile home, which research had shown him was needed. Later, he applied General Motors methods in the business, which never had known them before. He introduced the frequent model changes. He built a network of dealers. He bought out 4 lines of mobile homes, each competing with the others. His company's sales in 4 years have increased 500%, and Mr. Daciel has made $5 million out of the business that was about to fail. Today's population includes a large proportion of young married and retired couples, both groups being prime customers for mobile homes. Of course, Mr. Daciel realized that for every age has its special weight. The many failures will turn up in my survey of some years ago displayed a failure quality which belongs to any age. Not only had these people failed, but they kept on living with the failure. They spoke of it in preference to other topics. They lived in the past tense, reliving the pain of what had been. Those who had succeeded, however, spoke in the future tense. Their eyes were not upon their past, which often contained a good share of mistakes, but ever upon the future, upon their great objectives. This too was the invariable case with those 500 and more vastly successful men whom I interviewed at the behest of Andrew Carnegie. On their way up, they talked the way up, where failure had been laid behind. Failure stayed behind, and notably, they stayed out of their conversation. Concerning success and failure, I've- I have observed another trait which has much to do with peace of mind. It is obvious that those who are filled with malice and envy do not have peace of mind. Their malice and envy sour their lives. Failure so often hates the very set of success. Speaking with a successful man, I've noticed they speak in complimentary terms of other men who are succeeding. Their attitude is not one of envy, but of willingness to learn from others. Failure, on the other hand, goes out of his way to find some others' criticism of the successful person. If he cannot find anything doubtful about the way that person does business, then he will pick at some other area. His malice is evident, and so is the sad fact that he not only cannot command what money can buy, but also he cannot attain peace of mind. They speak in complimentary terms of other men who are succeeding. Their attitude is not one of envy, but willingness to learn from others. Is there a definite connection between being wealthy and having peace of mind? There is a connection, but it is not absolute. There certainly are poor people who have peace of mind, but they are far more rare than Faulkner would have us believe. You need not to be you need not be a millionaire, but without sufficient money, you're cut off from much in life that sustains the spirit. If you're continually worrying about where your next meal is to come from, when you'll be able to get your shoes repaired, how you're going to pay your dentist bill, how many more years your house can go without paint, you have no peace of mind. If your lack of funds forces you to live in the shabby neighborhood so that you constantly worry about the influence upon your children, you have no peace of mind. If you cannot occasionally buy and cherish something that is beautiful, if you cannot afford a vacation you really enjoy, if you cannot partake of a motion picture or a stage show, which you know is very much worthwhile, the old man does not have the chance to satisfy itself. Money brings much good into your life and much that nobody should have to do without. It is no surprise that there are many rich people who enjoy peace of mind, but there are many who do not. If the main purpose of a fortune is to make its possessor worry about keeping his fortune, peace of mind goes out the window. One of the failures which have illuminated my knowledge and strengthened my soul came when I was quite wealthy. I simply became poor, quite poor. The circumstances are revealing. Perhaps as a compensation for the dirt poor days of my youth, I became enamored of big houses, big cars, large acreage, and similar symbols of wealth. Perhaps I was merely in line with my times, which seemed to demand that when a man with money, he had to display it. Today's millionaires are much less ostentatious. At any rate, my books were selling well. I'd made a name as a trainer of salesmen. Other enterprises prospered, and so it seemed imperative that I must drive a Rolls Royce. Soon I had a pair of Rolls Royce. Soon after this, I cradled my cars in a big garage on a large estate in the Catskill Mountains, north of North New York City. I saw that estate as a monument to my achievements. The estate called for servants, for a midnight staff, for foreman over the midnight man. It called for lavish dinner parties, the expenses of which would have made Dorn the Rockefeller grow. Once I gave out a general invitation to a barbecue dinner, expecting that perhaps 100 people would show up. Over 3,000 attended. The highway was tied up with a traffic jam for 2 miles each way, and the traffic patrolman never did forgive me. The clubhouse on the estate could sleep 40 guests in comfort and was seldom without a full load. Once the overflow swept into my private quarters, I arrived home hoping for some peace of mind and found a stranger asleep in my bed. Moreover, he had appropriated the only pairs of pajamas I had available. Let us draw the curtain on the Hill estate. It went full of song shortly after the crash of 20s of 29. When I got over the initial shock, how relieved I felt, how peaceful, how newly powerful was the man which had been overlaid with worry. Three of my friends, whose combined assets were less than the amount I lost when I lost my estate, did not have faith in the great principle that every adversity has within it the seed of equivalent benefit. One jumped off a high building on Wall Street, one fired a bullet into his brain, and the third man was halted out of Hudson River 6 weeks after he had jumped in. I made money again, of course I did. The principles of the science of achievement saw to that. My lost estate had not lost with it my knowledge that any goal set up by a human man can be achieved by that man's possessor. Ever since, I've lived comfortably but without show. What good is money when it becomes a milestone? What good is money when it becomes a milestone? Make sure your work and your money benefits someone besides yourself. One of the positive results that came after I had firmly closed the door on my experiences in the Catskill Mountains was this. I found time in which to write more books. These books have benefited me and they have benefited mankind. And so they have benefited me with more than money. When Andrew Carnegie decided to use his great wealth to fund free libraries, he greatly increased his peace of mind. Henry Ford was pretty tough about giving away his money. When at length he learned it was possible to find people who deserved it and would use it well, I'm sure he felt the same weird satisfaction. There's another important principle which ensures that as your wealth grows, so will your peace of mind. Do not hurt any other person in order that you may succeed. I'm thankful I learned this early in life. When a man discovers himself and within it, and with it the ways in which he can earn big money, Now and then he will see a way to put some extra weight on his side of the scales. Like the butcher's hand, which is weighed along with the hamburger, it wouldn't be noticed. I could have added to my wealth by dishonest means on many occasions, but I would have lost my peace of mind. Among the men I interviewed after I accepted my commission from Andrew Carnegie were several who were little better than parrots of the business world. In most cases, I did not know this at the time. Later events often show how much they had given up when, in fact, they stole from others and ruthlessly ruined others in order to aggrandize, aggrandize themselves. Some went to prison, some stayed out of a prison on legal technicalities. But who has peace of mind when no honest man will look him in the face? Today is the day of the large service corporation, often with a tremendous office staff. A man in the factory is likely to be judged by the kind of work he puts out, but a man in the office can push himself upward with various tricks of personality, tricks of paperwork, tricks of getting the other fellow to assume responsibility for mistakes, and so forth. To step up the ladder by stabbing on another man's face is to make a mockery of the money you earn. There is no peace of mind in this, and often there is no health, no ability to be happy, no harmony at home. You can be loved with the ability to buy what money can buy, and the degree of unhappiness rather more acute than a beggar's. I've spoken to several men in my classes who confessed they had cut many corners of honesty and business morality. Now they wish to make a new start. But was it possible? When they attained the only true wealth, honestly earned wealth, would they not still be made miserable by the tensions of guilt? I assured them they would not, if only they closed the door on the past. Let them consider dishonesty a mistake, even a disaster, but a past disaster. This is an important point with many ramifications, not necessarily dishonesty, but also any other negative state of mind held in the past can be left in the past, just as one leaves physical circumstances. I showed these men that now they were finding a new self. The past did not matter. The world is full of examples of men who learned from their own bad consciousness, consciousness, cons- consensus, bad consensus, or even in prison, that no dishonesty ever pays. The lesson learned is the lesson learned. And for most men, there is time enough and world enough to start again and build a glorious future. For an exception, I give you AI Cap one during the Great Depression, Depression. These notorious gangsters set up free soup kitchens at which he fed numbers of the unemployed. He was fond of calling attention to these soup kitchens as proof of the good he was doing his fellow man. Of course, I speak no such mockeries. Rather, let us think of men like O. Henry, who served a jail sentence for a crime. Surely it helped him at last to find himself, for it was afterward that he became known for his wonderful stories with all their deep understanding of human nature. Close the door on your past and keep it closed. I've heard it said that you never really get over the death of a loved one. This is so in the sense that every circumstance of your life, every joy and every sorrow has an effect in shaping you into what you are. But you have great control over the way it shapes you. Never forget that. I'm not one of those who believe in doing away with the natural emotion of sorrow when death occurs. Tears and sorrow are provided by nature as safety valve for the overflowing emotions. Yet most people wait too long to close the door on mourning, or they never close it. We say there is no use in worrying over something you cannot control. Yet we worry over death for unconscionable periods of time, unconscionable periods of time, knowing all the while we cannot control it. The physical body comes from the air and the soil, and goes back to the sources from which it came. Perhaps the mental and spiritual portions are some mysterious essence of life also go back to sources we can sense but cannot discover. So be it. Carry along with you not the pain you knew when the loved one died, but rather the positive and sustaining memories. As life is a natural process, so death is also. Do you think it's possible to have only one great love in your life, especially if the love was sealed in marriage? Human experience proves that it's not so. While I believe firmly in marriage, I know that the word marriage is not always synon- synonymous, synonymous with the word happiness, marriage, happiness. You have a right to happiness, and this is your life. When a marriage turns out to have been a mistake, when it can be broken, but it is not broken, then the mistake is perpetuated and shadows all the rest of life. Sometimes the door of the past must be closed upon a marriage before either party to the marriage, or both, can find any kind of life success. Scheiß. You have a right to happiness, and this is your life. When the marriage turns out to have been a mistake, it can be broken, but it's not broken. Then the mistake is perpetuated and shadows all the rest of life. Sometimes the door of the past must be closed upon a marriage before either party to the marriage or both can find any kind of life success. A job that is past opens a new door to the future. Suppose you have lost your job through no fault of your own. Suppose then there's a great resentment and festering heartache of your former employer who was so unjust to you. Meanwhile, you're going around looking for another job, and something is saying no to any prospective future employer. What says no? The negative qualities of hatred and the resentment which beam from your man to his. He cannot tell just what it is, but he feels something disturbing about you and he doesn't want you in his office or his shop. Put the temporary setback firmly behind you, however. Go out with a determined will to get a better job than the one you lose. And anyone who interviews you will feel the positive qualities that mean good man. What if you are questioned about your former employer? Say nothing bad about him. What was bad must always stay in the past and never be allowed to hinder the future. Jobs also seem to be favorite spots in which to grow grudges. Of course, you have rights, and it is no part of success or peace of mind to allow yourself to be stepped upon. Many little scratches in human relations, however, are nothing but that, just little scratches and need not be reacted as as though they were deep wounds. How big are you? How big are you? It takes a big person to succeed. To begin with, it takes a big person to see what is big and worth one's attention, rather than waste emotional energy on trifling matters. When you see how you damage yourself by burying resentment and grudges, you can put small annoyances in the past as soon as they occur. At times, it is advisable to talk things over, point out how another person wounds others, and start fresh with the air cleared. But nurse the Guji is a viper in the bosom. It is a treasured negative, and you not only let it take away your peace of mind, you also encourage the formation of ulcers and many other ailments which the man can inflict upon the body. Close the door. It is wonderful and gratifying to see how the habit of closing the door upon the past becomes one of the greatest of sustaining habits. It helps you take possession of your own mind and condition it for the attainment of any purpose you desire. Go the extra mile. I have often been asked to give a man something to do that helps him leave resentment behind him, especially where his job and his career are concerned. The best possible action is this: go the extra mile. Give more service and better service than you are paid for. Find out more about your job and the job above it than you absolutely have to know. Work in a way that makes your job do more than it is expected to do for the organization that employs you. A young man was an estimator for a large printing firm. He didn't pay much attention to typefaces, being content to let the customers go on using the typefaces to which they were accustomed. This made his job easier, but as I pointed out to him, it did nothing to qualify him as a man who really knows his job. He studied typefaces, arrangements of type on the page, and other matters which line the effect and even artistry to broadsides and brochures. When his boss received the compliments on the beautiful jobs you turned out, the boss realized what this young man was doing for his firm's reputation. The young man is not an executive of the firm, where before he was scarcely noticed. The young man also has relieved himself of a feeling of bitterness which might, in the end, have resulted in making him an old man with a mean little salary and a mean little soul. A saleswoman at a dry goods counter had decided that her salary and her small commissions paid her for going through the routine motions of selling what she found on the shelves, and that was that. One day a woman asked her so pleasantly and so positively to look for an atom in the depth of the stockroom that she found herself looking, and when she discovered the atom, she felt bigger inside. Thereafter, she made a point of suggesting atoms which were not visible and of putting through special orders even when they resulted in little benefit to herself. Soon she had a regular client, clientele. clientele. Customers were willing to wait in order to have her serve them. Moreover, her knowledge of her business caused the buyer to rely upon her judgment. She is a buyer now, with a grand career opening before her, she says. There are two factors that can make you successful: your job and yourself. You're always the most important factor. Of course, you don't have to feel mean and small and imposed upon before you go the extra mile. Autonomy in itself, the willingness to do more than you absolutely must, is the hallmark of the big earner, the great leader, the happy and the hearty person who day by day builds up value to his life. See yourself on the next step of the ladder and the next step above that one, and many rewarding steps ahead. And the image takes hold firmly in your mind and gets you going. Should you meet a situation in which your extra efforts are not rewarded, your positive mind finds courage and resourcefulness, and you leave the job that's wrong for you, push it back into your past, and find another in which the image becomes real, where your stuff never matters so much as where you are going. And it is first within your own mind that you conceive greatly and begin to go. Again, again, the supreme secret has been mentioned in several ways. You may not yet be able to put it in words, but it works more and more strongly in your favor as you read successive chapters of this book. Checking on chapter 2. Every adversity has within it the seeds of equivalent or greater benefit. As you meet the circumstances of life, they may seem adverse and damaging. Later, you'll find that every so-called misfortune source the seed of greater fortune to come. To help this mighty dynamic work its wonders in your life, close the door on your past, carry along with you only what is pleasant and instructive, leaving gloom and pain behind you, and you can see the future and make it yours. Keep yourself aware of life's endless combinations of circumstances. Do not believe that one experience of lost love or lost opportunity or other misfortune has ended your chances of winning what you thought you had lost. Some of the world's greatest men knew failure after failure as they grew toward their ultimate success. Even a handicap becomes a benefit when the man himself decides the way in which it will be a benefit to him. When you speak of failure, you attract failure. When you speak of success, you attract success. The failure typically dwells upon his failure and drags it through his life like a prisoner dragging his chains. The failure also tends to be envious of these who succeed, and his envy and his malice rob him not only of wealth but also of peace of mind. Every age has its special advantages, and an entire business may be labeled failure and yet come to life and make millions in the hands of a man who sees success and speaks only of success. Is there a definite connection between wealth and peace of mind? There is a strong connection, but it is not unbreakable. Sufficient money is necessary to almost everyone who wishes to attain peace of mind, but wealth can steal happiness away from those who make it dishonestly or do not use it correctly. Use your work and your wealth to help others. Above all, make sure that as you climb the ladder of success, you do not step upon anyone else. Cutting the corners of dishonesty sets up a feeling of guilt which can destroy happiness. Even so, one who has erred can put his error firmly in the past, close the door, and go on to great accomplishment. Go the extra mile. In work situations, especially, grudges and the feeling of resentment play havoc with a man's ability to conceive and achieve. Going the extra mile has a tonic effect in relieving the man of built-in obstacles. Add to your work more than you are paid for. Always qualify yourself for the next step upward and the steps behind. People who succeed are not people who hold grudges or who withhold their best work, but those who in every act and thought pave their way toward greater things. 好，以上就是第二章的全部内容。下一次接着阅读第三章的 Basic Mental Attitude that brings wealth and peace of mind。下次再见。